They say that intelligence is sort of understanding that a tomato is a fruit. And then they say that wisdom is the acknowledgement and understanding that putting tomatoes into a fruit salad is not necessarily going to be the most appetizing, if that makes any sense. And there's a difference in wisdom and intelligence, and di- there's sort of a very skewed perception, at least I think, upon which people label things as intelligent or people as intelligent or things that make a person think that they're smart or sound smart, um whatever that means. Socrates essentially posited that the wisest people are the ones that admit that they know nothing at all, and the ones that project sort of this identity as an intellectual are the ones that are not intelligent at all. And sort of residing within the sort of, you know, propagation, so to speak, of, you know, the idea that good academics indicates a level of intelligence is inherently skewed. I've mentioned in previous videos that I did very well in school with you know, I don't really care about reiterating it, so I'm not gonna. If you wanna hear, the numbers, go back to the first video, like, 'cause I really don't even feel good about saying it. It's like, it's not a testament to any sort of level of intelligence at all. Because when you understand what wisdom and sort of the dynamics of the process of knowledge acquisition actually are, you understand that it's more about sort of the idea that you are inherently cultivating and developing ideas. You're creating things, and creating things requires you to be wrong and vulnerable at times. It requires you to understand and to have humility and be humble in the idea that you could be wrong or that your ideas might be challenged. And so many people reside within their ego and feel threatened when confronted with an opposing viewpoint or an idea that sort of inherently contradicts everything that they're talking about. They just can't admit that they're wrong, and we see this in so many different domains in life. It doesn't even have to be in sort of the ones that, I mean, at least I'm thinking of in sort of the realm of politics or, religion, but more along the lines of just the understanding and concept of the integration of new knowledge and the development of new schema or integration of new knowledge into your schema or pre-existing schema. Sort of it alludes and sort of follow along the lines of, sort of people's inherent biases or biases about things and sort of their lack of even the wherewithal to recognize them and understand that there's deeper issues behind the sort of beliefs that they inherently have and have adopted and the identities that they have. When you dissolve the ego, you sort of you work to develop that because you realize that you won't know everything and you can't proclaim to know everything. And even within at least the country that I reside in, academics are very much synonymous with an individual's level of, aptitude to do something. I mean, that's the whole market for what post-secondary education is. You go to college and you think at least that you're getting a degree to qualify you to do a job. But really, what happens? You get a job, or in this day and age, you might not get a job because the idea of college has lost the meaning of what, it's supposed to be. It's a business. Education is a business. And when you go to college, you come out of college with the same degree that, 500 other people got. So really it devalues it. It's sort of the idea of like an overinflation, sort of like an inflation. Like like the way that money can be sort of lose its intrinsic value if there's like a high level of inflation, like, going back to like the 1930s and 40s with the Great Depression and all that. And, the way that, money used to be sort of like you could stack bricks, like you could stack money to the ceiling and not even be able to afford a piece of bread in some places. And I feel like that's what's happening with the education system, at least where I am, because like everybody graduates college and everybody, because they think that that's what they're supposed to do in order to get a good job and learn things, but you honestly don't even need to go to college in order to be successful anymore. You don't need to go to college in order to learn things. But we're being sold that idea, and we're shoving that down, kids' throats at like 16 years old who are still trying to figure out like how to talk to a girl. And they're over here being told like, "Do you know what you want to do with your rest of your life? Do you have an idea of what you like? Oh, you're gonna go to college? Here's you gotta pay. Pay money, right? Pay me money." And it's like, how can my country not even be number one, and yet we spend an obscene amount of money on dispersing loans and private loans, and it's so expensive to go to school. And the countries that have, better scores, if you're going to look at that metric, are the ones that have education that's practically free. I mean, very low cost. Like, I think Denmark right now is number one. And like, it's like $600 a year or something like that to go to college. Like, I went to college and I'm tens of thousands of dollars in debt. And the thing is, I chose a career where I wanted to help people learn. I wanted to be a teacher. I was a teacher. But how, as a teacher, could I have been making not even enough money to afford rent or food? Like, I had to go to food banks when I was a teacher. And I had to use that energy, the last energy that I had, to go teach a classroom size of 20 plus kids. And I couldn't even take care of myself. And it's purposeful. I realize that it's purposeful because it doesn't the system doesn't want you to think, and teachers can be catalysts for the ability for somebody to think. If you don't allow teachers to survive, they're gonna leave. Why are they gonna leave? Because 'Cause they're not being able to survive. It's not valued. Whether inherently actually enacted as, sort of a subliminal, sort of endeavor to sort of be like, "Okay, like, I'm not even aware of the fact that I'm doing this to our system." And sometimes policies happen and people enact them in good faith, but they don't know. But, like, I don't feel like the system, at least where I am, is being supported enough. I don't think it's being funded enough. I don't think that resources are being allocated well enough. And I don't even think that the methodologies in terms of what we do have now are beneficial. It's not like if we threw more money at it, it would help, because the whole system and process for learning and the indoctrination that's happening is more disadvantageous than anything. You don't need, $1 million fully renovated schoolhouse or building in order to teach somebody. Like, kids used to learn in like one room schoolhouses. I mean, where like you don't need all that. And like curriculum is another thing like that. Like, in order to develop the truly important experiences of life, you don't need a curriculum that times you to 5 minutes for a warm up, right? You don't need that. Like, what kid at 6 years old wants to wake up and go to school at 7:30 in the morning and sit down and have work already on their desk? What is that teaching a kid about the process of learning? Is it supposed to feel like that? Like, "Oh my god, like, why do I gotta do this?" And I can't even use my favorite purple crayon. Like, I have to use a number 2 pencil. Like, you're just boxing in kids and beating that creativity and love for learning and that curiosity out of them. I used to work at Dollar General, and I would watch kids, like, come into the store. They'd be so like, they'd look at everything. They'd hold a bag of, like, chips up to, like, the light and look at the reflective, film on it or whatever, and, like, shake the bag, and, like, they'd explore. They were inquisitive. Parents or adults coming in the store throw a bag of chips down on the table or the counter and then just finish it before they even leave the store and throw the bag away in the trash and not even think about it. Like, they say that, you die when you're 27 and you're only buried when you're 80. And sort of we have this idea and we use this sort of trope of like an NPC, right? Like non-playable character, somebody that doesn't think. But I think it's some people's awareness of the fact that a lot of people don't, and they adopt ideas and they listen to things and they just consume it. They don't create anything. As a teacher, I had to learn a principle called Bloom's taxonomy, sort of cognitive thought, and the way and the different levels that people learn. Like the initial sort of levels are really about just taking in and consuming information and really just kind of not doing much with it, like really just kind of saying what somebody said. And how is that any different than a spelling test? Like, okay, I learned this word, I learned how to spell it. Teacher says the word, I write the word. How does that teach a kid? And yeah, they could give the definition, but where is the kid deriving any sort of value in the word itself? Where is the kid even developing the inherent value of understanding the power of manifesting words? Like the power of being able to take your hand and create an idea with a single line. Like kids don't learn that. They don't learn the importance and power there is of learning. Thousands of years ago, people used to be in highly regarded positions of civilization who could write and who could read and translate ideas. Immense centers of cultural expression were in places such as the Library of Alexandria and written on stone tablets and ancient poems and transcriptions and languages. Like, they didn't worry about if it was a number 2 pencil. They didn't have a curriculum. They delved into the inherent curiosity that they already had to learn more. But part of the learning process is also understanding that you're not gonna know everything despite your pursuit to, and project yourself as wise. Because the more that you explore and understand about things, the more you're confronted and the more you have to think about your ideas and sort of embrace the humility that comes with realizing that your ideas could be wrong or that something is challenging them. And instead of running away or sort of vehemently rejecting that opposing ideology, why not explore and see if you can try to incorporate it into your own understandings or understand, well, what does it say about me as a person for believing that? Metacognitive intelligence and the ability to be able to not only just synthesize information, but reflect on the knowledge that you have and create something new. We don't do that in school. We don't. Like, how is a morning work supposed to help kids actually understand the inherent principles and drivers behind the motivation intrinsically and extrinsically to become somebody who understands things, at least in a different way? Why does it have to be marked down with an A or a 95 or a percentage point or a diagnostic test? Why does it have to be shown through a Scantron? Why can't we teach kids basic tools such as the ability to develop language? Capitalize on a child's ability to be able to process, understand, and acquire language. Teach them a variety of languages. Show them a variety of different texts and stories that are in different languages. Expose them to music and art and from people. Help them connect. And then through that process, they understand and begin to work with what they actually like. What are they interested in and what drives them to learn? We kind of see this with literacy when you're teaching young kids developing concepts of print. What kind of books would a good teacher give a kid who's trying to learn how to read? Probably books that they're interested in. But why can't we broaden that scope to give them the tools to then capitalize on things that they want to do? Why does a kid have to be shoehorned into doing things like trigonometry? If a kid doesn't care about that, why do they have to learn that? I went to high school, I learned pre-calculus. I have not used a single ounce of pre-calculus in my entire life since then. Do you know what would have been a great class to have? A great class to have would be the concept of art, like an art class. Every kid should take an art class, I think. And it doesn't necessarily have to be drawing. Like, I have an art class, like, on OutSchool, like, I'm a tutor on OutSchool. I don't have any clients right now, but my sort of philosophy when, having this class is sort of the idea that and I'll link it in the description if you're curious, but it's more about the idea of showing people what art is, and not just in the sense of drawing, but the sense of, like, art theory, philosophy behind art. Because if and I mention art because art is the penultimate culmination of actual sort of, if you want to use the word intelligence. Because in Bloom's taxonomy, the ability to create something is an indicator of it, right? Like, to be able to take information that you have and from a variety of sources due to an eclectic approach of knowledge acquisition and information, you take the variety of sources and inspirations that you have and develop something new, something that hasn't been there before. That is powerful. So, when understanding it, why would it be wrong if a kid drew a picture of the concept that they understood? Why would it be a problem if a kid wrote a poem? Why does a kid need to fill out a Scantron to demonstrate their knowledge or sort of lines, like 3 I remember being a kid and having, like, 3 to 4 lines to respond to a prompt, and as I would get to the end, I would really squeeze in the information. I don't believe that any sort of academic knowledge or acumen is an indicator of actual sort of intelligence, at least in the broader sense. I mean, I guess you could be scholarly and academically intelligent, but really, education is a business, and if you know how the business runs, you can be a good employee. I got in trouble so much in school sometimes because I would just question things. Like, "Well, why are we doing that? Why is that important? Why does that matter?" But eventually I got really good at sort of being able to say, "Okay, yep, that's what you want." Like, I figured out the teacher, I figured out what they wanted. Doesn't matter. Like, didn't matter what I actually thought. They didn't wanna hear that, but they're not in a position to be able to allow for that, you know? There's a script. Teachers read off a script in curriculum, and kids have to abide by it, you know? Eh, I learned more about being a teacher in my first day than I ever did in 5 years getting a master's degree at the college I went to. And the reason why is because there's a difference. Even within student teaching, there's a difference. When you're a student teacher, you have that other teacher in that classroom, or you have support, right? They don't expect you to do it. It's not your show, right? But that day that you get the job contract, the day that you sign your name on the dotted line, and the day that you walk into that classroom all set up, it's the first day of school. And those kids come in and they sit down. Principal says, "Good luck, just check it in," and closes the door. You're on your own. I mean, you could have a para. So, like, that's a moment where it's like, time to do it. Like, you're thrown into the ocean. It's sink or swim. And the thing is, some teachers reside so much within that ego that they think that they're the big boss. They're not. Do you know who the actual boss is? It's nobody. Nobody's the boss. Not even the kids. Do you know why? Because you are all people. You are all connected. You're all humans just trying to learn. And when you remove the ego, especially teachers, you realize that you're no different or better than children in the way of knowledge. Because a true teacher is somebody that recognizes that they are just as much of a student as they are a teacher. Students, kids can teach you so much. They're not Kids are so intelligent. It's like when a kid falls, for example, very young in age, and they fall, they trip or whatever, they cry and they get up, right? They explore. They don't have to write. You're not going over with a clipboard and a rubric trying to tell the kid that they failed, right? But for some reason, when it comes to at least the traditional sense of education where I live, it's like, Okay, you got a 50 because you didn't fill out the paper the right way. It removes their innate ability to get back up and try again because we put all the pressure on them. We indoctrinate them and say, you need to do that. You need to write it this way. You need to express it this way. And kids just want to explore. They just want to create things. They want to draw. They build sandcastles and toys. And then we shove an iPad in their face and say, okay, this is what you're going to do. Parents will pacify kids with technology now. And if you look at the data, ever since technology has been integrated in the classroom, scores have plateaued or have gone down. Yet it doesn't stop us from giving kids, that are 7 years old Chromebooks. I mean, I did it. I was a teacher and I left teaching because I realized that I'm just not aligned with what I actually feel like it needs to be. It needs to change. Just the whole concept. Why was it people like Michelangelo were able to create that, you know, those works of art? Nowadays, we have people typing in chat like a prompt that was probably developed by AI to make a video of AI. Where is the human soul in that, in the creation of it? You're not developing anything. You're just putting out stuff that's not even yours. You didn't create that. Algorithms are like curriculum. It's just giving you a path that you haven't created. And the societal pressure, like the societal pressure, especially as somebody like me, I'm in my 20s, right? Like the idea of like people getting married now and the idea of people having children and like worrying that they're getting old, I feel so bad for them. I don't feel bad. I'm at peace and I understand that they're on their journey. But if people understood really sort of the idea of what growth is and how time really isn't even a thing, like people would stop putting so much pressure on themselves and stop comparing themselves to people. Like, do you think I actually care that people are like married and have houses and stuff? No, because I'm on my own journey and technology shoves it in your face. It wasn't too long ago that we had to use horseback to get mail to somebody, handwritten notes, right? Nowadays, it's like that's all gone, and we're worried about the lives of people that we have never even met in real life, and we're judging them and judging ourselves based on videos that could have not even been created in real life. We're just we're you're not living. Just relax, okay? Just relax. You're doing fine, and you're not dumb. Just create, build something. Understand that you need to be vulnerable to grow. You need to acknowledge that you have things about you that you're not proud of to grow. If you stay rooted in your ideas and don't change or don't reflect, you're not living. There's a very, very famous philosopher, okay, who basically said that the unexamined life is not worth living. Look it up. Look up the person. I'm not going to tell you who it is. Look it up. Do the research. Look into their ideas. Look into ideas that oppose their ideas. People that would have arguments with him. Why did they have arguments? How does that relate to your philosophies?